Hi, everybody. I'm Laura,
And I'm Allison.
and this is the Earp Top 5 podcast for freedom.
On this episode, we're going to be talking about the top 5 moments of Waverly Earp, played by Dom PC.
You know, when I think about which character has had the biggest journey, it's Waverly.
Well, when I think about what I want to do most in this world, it's this podcast.
Well, isn't that just cuckoo bananas? It's Dom Chocolate.
Thanks for chatting with us, Dom. That was wonderful.
First time I'm getting the old American accent out in a while. Bit rusty round the corners, but lovely to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
If I could just, before we get into it, that was one of our questions. What's the hardest word that you had to say in an American accent since you brought it up?
You know the answer to that already, Laura.
Well, actually, yes and no, because Allison thinks it's one word and I think it's another word.
Okay, well.
I think I know what it is. Can I say it?
Yeah.
Cheater.
See, I thought it was the Madison Yuck, but okay.
Oh, the Madison Yuck was pretty tough too, but that's not necessarily like
an American word. That's more
exactly.
Like,
I was thinking more about sort of the conventional words.
To be fair, cheater is hard when you think about, like, if I try to do a British accent, I don't know that I could say that word.
Totally.
Please.
Your mouth shape is completely different. And as you know, and for anyone that doesn't know, there's a fantastic outtake of me with all my passion being like, I'm a cheater. Dressed in like a total, right. the perfect coat.
Which I think made it so much better was the coat,
Absolutely.
It was wonderful.
All right, so let's get into this. So my first Waverly moment, the Wonderful Waverly, I like to say that there are two types of entrances. There's a normal entrance and there's a Waverly entrance into a scene. And usually that's Waverly that's jealous / feisty / don't fuck with me Waverly. Mm-hmm. And obviously the first time we meet Waverly was when she kicked down the door and with the shotgun and blows Champ and Winona off the bed. But then we also have the bar fight, which Waverly did start. I don't know if that's a controversy, but Waverly started that bar fight by slapping Jolene. And then the vamp ball when she
Jolene, no, come on. Am I right?
Fine. But the vamp ball as well, when she kind of has to stake the vampire to get Nicole out of the trance or what have you. So I'm just curious. Those moments, these like just balls of rage Waverly moments, are you just when you read the script for moments like that, are you just like, yeah, because I need to get some aggression out? Totally. or are you just like, it's just another day?
Yeah. Firstly, I love that you spoke about the entrance, because let me just preface by saying that this was like the hardest exercise I've done in a very long time, narrowing down my top 5 Waverly moments, because this character has just been a dream to play, right? Like you're like, oh no, but what about that moment? And then that moment. So I had to write like a big long list and then literally compare each one and say, okay, out of this one and this one, I think I'd have to, cross that one off and so on and so forth. So anyway, but of course, the entrance was on there too. I mean, who has an entrance like that? Like you say, it's like, it was really something very special. And I feel so fortunate that she got that, because it was iconic, like in many ways, right? I have to say, when I first read that scene, I did not know what to make of it. I said to the director, I was like, I don't really like, I'm just like literally like pounding down the door and I have my shotgun in my hand. Like, this feels like very different to what I'm kind of building as the character of Waverly. But I think that's the bit that I love so much about that side of Waverly, is that it just shows you how like multifaceted she is as a character and how we all have so many different sides. And I love that at a character that you wouldn't typically necessarily associate that with, that she embodies that so well as well. And that there are moments where, yeah, it's just like, don't fuck with me.
I was going to say, because it also made my top 5 list. It was hard to narrow down. This is a hard exercise to do, which why did we create this podcast? I don't know, but it's really difficult. But this was also on my list because I just wanted to make it on my list because it's like such an iconic moment. And it's the first time we meet Waverly. And it's like, this show is called Wynonna Earp, but the show became just as much about Waverly as it did about Wynonna. And I think that having that type of entrance just kind of shows that, like, okay, yeah, this character is going to be important. You don't get an entrance like that and then like not have a significant part of this show. So I just love that it was such a grand, fanatic, you know, type entrance. And then it's also, it demonstrates, you immediately find out they're sisters and you find out there's this dynamic. And it's like, you're like, okay, so Wynonna came home. This is who she left behind. This is going to be an important character in Wynonna's life. That's why I love the moment, because it's like, how could you not love Waverly Earp after someone busts through a door like that?
Exactly. No, I agree wholeheartedly. I think it's awesome. And I would say also, like, I put, when I was doing my initial list, I was like, as well, the reason why that scene holds importance to me too is that the scene directly after it, where we're walking just literally down the road and it's like, you're back, and like all of that. That was actually the first scene I ever filmed on the show. And it was like such a special moment for myself, Dom, you know, feeling like just totally out of my depth, honestly, you know, just had arrived and was still figuring out, like, you know, if they realize I'm British, and okay, I'm going to do my best at the accent and whatever. And it seems like a pretty like proper, legit show, and I'm in a different country, and just like all the layers that come with that experience. And then that stepping onto set for the first time, and the nerves, the amount of nerves I had, and then how naturally it came. The minute that I just connected with Mel, and the way that she acts that little scene afterwards, I think is so good. Like, even the way that I didn't obviously feel it when I was in the hug, but the reaction that she has of the uncomfortability of that intimacy, and how the dynamic of Waverly just really leaning in and being so happy to see her, and just like, it says so much about the relationship right from the get-go. And as you really say, especially like entering in the way that she does, and then the joke, and then Mel being like, you've grown, and like even that like gesture that wasn't in the script was just so perfect. And then leading into that scene and really establishing the relationship from the get-go was a very like standout moment for me.
Yeah. Well, now that we've talked about your first entrance, I'll just move it to my second moment, because it's sort of related. Okay. And it's the in episode 2 of season 1, it's Waverly's first meeting with Doc Holliday and Shorty's. So, you know,
my God. Yeah, I forgot about that one.
Yeah. And it's, you know, it's Doc is there talking with Shorty, trying to pay with pirate booty or something. And Shorty's like, I've said it again, we only take cash or whatever. Yeah. Waverly comes down the stairs and she's like, don't worry, I'll handle it. And it's the first time in the scene that they're together. And it's like, Waverly's like, so I rewatched the scene recently, and Waverly's just so like charming in this scene, because she's like, you know, I know you, you're this. Like, yeah, like you're this, you know, you're one of the groupies. They're here all the time. And I just loved the interaction. And it was fun going back and rewatching to see the beginning of the Doc and Waverly relationship, because obviously we know how that's progressed. I mean, he was her best man in the wedding. He went into the garden to save her. Like, they developed a really deep relationship. So what can you say, Dom, about like that scene with Tim in the beginning? Like, was that the first scene you guys filmed together? And how did it feel developing this relationship between them throughout the seasons?
Beautiful question. And awesome reflections, because as I say, I completely forgot about that scene. What I remember about that day was how hyper I was. And I think Tim was like, who is this human? Because I was so full of energy, you know. I was kind of like bouncing around all over the place, and I was so excited to be in a scene with, you know, Tim, and establishing these characters. And I really felt like there was instant chemistry between the two of us. And I think that was feeding my energy too, of just like, I can't believe I'm doing this. Yeah. This is so awesome, right? And I just really love the scene, how it was written. I think there were so many like layers to it, and because the characters are so different, and I think that's what Winona Earp does so well. You put any two characters in a scene together, there's so much interesting stuff that comes out of it because of the differences between all of us, and yet the similarities and the through lines that connect us all. But yeah, I just remember being incredibly like bouncy, and when I think back to that, I was like, wow, I was 25 and was just it's such in a different place in my life, you know. Yeah. And much like Waverly has gone on such a big journey, I too, Dom, have been on a similar and yet different one in parallel over the course of the 5 years or so that we've been doing this. And so it's like, when you bring that up, I'm like, it's like nostalgia, because it's a past version of me that was very playful. Like, there was a lot of play in that moment, and it was really awesome to be figuring out the character and learning from the person who's in front of you in the way that they react to the character, and seeing how like cool and like just awesome Tim is.
Yeah, it was cool to see like Doc does react to Waverly in a way that I would think Tim would react to you being like bouncy. You know what I mean? Like,
totally.
He was like caught off guard a little bit. And I think that made the scene so much more authentic, because that's totally how Doc would react to someone like Waverly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well said. And then of course the deepening of the relationship is just awesome. And I love the relationship between Doc and Waverly just as much as I love the relationship between Tim and I, you know, that developed. And I love the fact that he was the best man, and like going to see him, and like again that bouncy energy that was just like so excited, and how Doc just I believe that he just totally loves that and has such a soft spot for that in the end, and so kind of comes full circle.
Yeah, I loved it.
So actually my next moment is from 109, but it's not the way hot stuff. It's actually right before, when Waverly's talking to Gus, and Gus tells her, "You've been doing what others want you to do for so long. Now you can do whatever it is you want." And I think, and you can say yes or no, but I think that's the moment where Waverly felt like she can come into her own power, as you know, she can finally look out for herself. So often, I mean, we didn't know her for very long before then, but so often she was just looking out for other people. She was doing she was working at Shorty, she was with Champ, she was doing all these things. And I think that moment, whether or not she was waiting for permission from Gus or from somebody to do that, but I feel like that moment was really when she took charge of her own life. And yes, that includes, you know, going off into the sheriff's station and going to see Nicole and kind of taking that leap with her.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it's the catalyst that inspires her to take action. And it's interesting because had there not been that moment, would she have felt ready, or as you say, have given herself permission? Maybe you know, sometimes we do in life, we need something reflected back to us by somebody that we love to say, hey, it's okay, like I see this, I see you, and go for it. Like, you know, just that energy can sometimes be the thing that pushes us along in the right direction, right? So, and I really love that relationship too, and thought that was a very special moment between the two of them, and a really empowering moment. Like, she was essentially giving Waverly her power, as you say, like saying, like you just expressed, like, what are your needs? What do you actually want right now? Like, just take a second and just look inside for a second and go and be that and live that. And that felt like the perfect pre to what happened next, and like the perfect build up.
Yeah. And of course that led to an infamous way hot moment. So what do you think about, do you think Gus was ultimately the catalyst to that led to this huge moment in Waverly's journey?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say. I think she would have ended up there. regardless. Just saying. I think that there was too much chemistry to not. And definitely one of the things that I love most about Waverly is her bravery and her courage. And I think that she would have found her own way eventually. Maybe it wouldn't have happened as quickly. And it's lovely that she was encouraged by somebody that she loves, whether Gus was being specific about that or, you know, or not. Like, just hearing those words was perfect timing. So yeah, I definitely think catalyst. So I tell you what was difficult about this for me. I had lots of like ones that maybe you wouldn't necessarily think of for personal reasons, and also because I just think, like, for example, like the stuff with Willa, like I think was so important for Waverly. And like there was that scene in the bedroom where she's like sharing how it was for her, and then Willa's just like, it sounds so hard for you. And like I remember, like, as the character and as Dom, like just being like, oh shit, like this is really important big moments for the character, right? But okay, if I'm going to go to like narrowing it down, I actually definitely put down that couch scene as one of my top 5 picks, because for me it's just such
what's so important about it?
Right? Which scene again? No, totally. It was a real toss-up for me between the intro scene and the couch scene, and I still don't know that I can say with certainty which one is my favorite, because they were both so important for me as a human as well as for the character. But I think if we're thinking about like top 5 moments for the character, the couch just takes it. Nedley's scene just takes it a little bit further for me. You know, it's such an important moment, and it was a huge moment for my journey too, and being able to live that through a character. Like, what fortune that I had to actually be able to express some of the things that I have been feeling in my life, of the thing that scares me the most, through the words of someone else. Like, that is such a gift. And something magic happened that day. Ron, the director, I just remember how invested he was in this moment, and I really felt the importance and the weight of it, and that felt really comforting and supportive because of what I was going through that I wasn't expressing to anyone. But nonetheless, even just having somebody that was really respecting this moment helped me to see the importance of this representation right from the get-go, and doing it right and being respectful and taking the time that it takes to nail it. And it was just such a beautiful scene.
And you mentioned bravery. I mean, that whole scene was just Waverly sort of putting it out on the line. You know, it could have gone multiple ways. You know, she could have been shut down, she could have been denied, but Waverly was like, I'm taking the leap, and she did it. And that's like what you said related to your personal journey. It's like sometimes you just have to take the leap.
Absolutely.
Why don't you give us another one, Allison?
Okay, cool. So I'm going to keep it in season 1, but into season 2, I'm going to talk about Gooverly, because who doesn't love Gooverly?
That was also on my list too.
Yes, it's such a fun moment. And I think that the whole, like, because you know, like in the season 1 finale, Waverly touches the goo. And I think it became a mantra in the fandom, like, don't touch the goo. This is the thing we say, do not touch the goo. But I just wanted to put it on my list because it was such a fun moment. And there were little pockets throughout the beginning of season 2 where we would see Gooverly within Waverly. And, you know, with season 1, we learned a lot about Waverly, but I think as most shows do, even in season 2, you're still learning about characters. And so it was really interesting to still be learning about Waverly, but also she's mixed in with this other entity that we're not sure what's Waverly and what's Gooverly at that point. And that was really hard to like decipher, but I really enjoyed seeing this side of her because she's just inherently good and the nicest person in Purgatory. So of course she would be the one to be possessed by the goo. But what do you remember about the Gooverly stuff? Like, my fun question is just like, do the contacts hurt? Like when you had to wear those, but how was it getting to play this different side of Waverly? Because I mean, a lot of actors have to wait years to get meaty roles like this, but you're like season 2 and they're possessing you with the demon, you know, you're flying in deep.
Waverly touched the goo.
Yeah.
It was written that there was going to be this like epic music that was like, oh my God, there's no way she can't touch it. And then in reality, I remember thinking, looks like it's a choice. What is that? But I'm so glad she did touch the goo, because like you say, it brought this whole other layer to the character that I got to explore, which was so cool, and like an entity, as you say, and finding that balance of what's Waverly and what's the goo, what's Miction, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was so fun to play. The bits that really stand out in my mind are, I've really enjoyed the scene where they're at the school and like there's a game going on or something.
It's a pep rally.
Nice. Just even like the outfits that she started wearing, because she was kind of in that sort of energy of like just a lot more like in her sexual energy and free and kind of like ballsy, and I really loved playing that, I'm not gonna lie. And I just remember like strutting across and like kissing Nicole, and just how empowering that felt, and like awesome, and the confidence that I had to embody was something that was new for me at that time in my life. Like it felt like I was really acting, but it felt like a cool thing to explore. And then the other piece that really stands out is when Winona manages to release me of the demon, and how I just went for it. And I remember like when I first saw that back, I was like, you could literally see the veins popping out of my face when I was like, you know, like when it was coming out, vomiting up the goo. And remember when I was however old and you used to stick
grape soda
in my mouth or something, or whatever it is, up my nose. Like that was just so fun to play. There were so many different like layers and dynamics, and with Nicole there, and then like the action with Mel, and then like there was just something, and then even the moment afterwards when Nicole comes, and there's just like so many different levels to that scene. But yes,
did
definitely
the contacts hurt? Because I'm just so curious about these black eyeballs.
Yes, I have to say that wasn't my favorite part of it. They actually, when I had to go for a fitting in Toronto to go get these bloody things put in my eyes, and I don't like things in my eyes. That's something that I've never been good at. And I get to the place, and they're like, okay, so don't worry. Essentially, what happens is they go like past the sensors in your eyes, so once they hit that like thing, you don't feel it anymore. And I'm like, yo, if it's touching like past an area that it shouldn't, I'm pretty sure that's like not supposed to go there. But yes, I got used to it in the end, and it's just not the most pleasant thing, but you do feel really cool once you have them in, because everyone's looking at you like, whoa, you look so weird, and you're like, yeah.
Well, at least Mel also had to wear them, so
yeah,
you weren't alone.
I think either Mel or you, there was somebody that wore them at a convention, and I think either Mel or you yelled at them and be like, because I think yes, because somebody,
a fan had them in.
Yeah, fan had them in, and she had them in for like the whole
hours.
Like 8 hours, and you're like, take them the fuck out. But actually it's interesting what you said about like the outfits. I don't think anybody like registered that. I certainly didn't, that there was like obviously there was a different like wardrobe or whatever when it was Gooferly, but I don't think I ever kind of like made that connection that that there was it scripted like that, or was it just kind of... It was
a conversation that I had with Jen, who's our wardrobe lead, and I just love how much attention to detail the wardrobe department brings to the table. And they essentially said, like, we want it to feel like it's in the Waverly ballpark, but we want to just pull ever so slightly, much like we are with the script, where you're like not 100% sure if she's being a little bit harsh because it's Waverly coming out, or whether it's actually just because it's Waverly that's like growing into herself and becoming more ballsy. We want to like reflect that in the clothing too. So there was a lot more like, there were some darker colors that maybe Waverly wouldn't traditionally wear at that point in her journey. So yeah, just like little details like that, and very high boots. And
I do remember the boots.
Yeah,
I do remember the boots. Yeah.
So my next one on the list is more recently. And it's from 406, and it's when Waverly confronts Ma'am Clanton in the barn.
Interesting.
You have Waverly who's watching the love of her life die, and she goes after the woman that cursed her. And what struck me is that there was such a range of emotion for Waverly in that scene, where she goes in, and it's kind of funny because she's straightening out the little jars of whatever specimens, and then Ma'am comes in and it's like, you're young, you'll find somebody else. And Waverly, there's this look, and it gets me every single time. But like, you just look off to the side and you say, I'd rather die. And it's, and honestly, the way I'm watching it, I feel like Waverly has just seen the future flash before her eyes. And that future, not including Nicole, is oh my God, is
the no-go,
is not an option for her.
Yeah.
And the way she says, I'd rather die, it's just like, that gets me every time. And then boom, right in the next scene where Ma'am is like, I have powers you can't comprehend. And Waverly's like, same bitch, and goes after her. And then I know that was all probably shot together. But then it's also the outside of that scene where after Waverly kills Ma'am, she's kind of like lost and she doesn't know where she is or whatever. I don't know if that was filmed at the same time or a different day or whatever. But when Winona finds her so kind of like out of it, like again, the range of just like emotions that you did, that the character went through, it was just like, what was it like to kind of go through all of those? I don't really know how to like ask a question. It's just like, how was it for you, like reading that script and just being like from beat to beat to beat? It's like a different thing that you have to like kind of get your head around.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. It was really intense, it's not like your everyday light little drama, or like that. It's when you actually, when I was working on it, I was like, Waverly kills somebody, that's a big deal. And how to play that within the world that we've created, of course, it makes sense. There's it's the person that went after her, her Nicole, and like, of course there needed to be something, she needed to do something, and that was what was available to her in that moment. I really enjoyed filming that scene. The inside the barn, I loved filming. The outside of the barn, I really struggled with. So I'm really grateful for that reflection, actually, Laura, because I felt very lost in it. And I think actually that was what the character inevitably was feeling. But I remember putting a lot of pressure on myself of just like, you've just killed someone. And sometimes there's moments when you're filming something where you're like, I can't relate to this. I understand the gravitas of this. I understand the depth. And yet, like, I'm not sure how to embody it right now in this moment. But I'm glad that it came across like, she's just trying to navigate the situation and feeling very lost in it, because that's essentially what I decided to play, because I wasn't able to drop in. It was another day, shooting out of order like that. Sometimes you're just like, okay, so what's just happened? And like, how do I get into that emotional state before coming into that scene? So yeah, I really appreciate that reflection. I absolutely loved working with Paula. She's such a beautiful human being, just like such a generous soul. And so I felt excited to be a part of any scene with her. And I felt very privileged to be able to play with her in that moment. And she had a real evil look to her. When she looked at me, I was like scared,
Yeah.
And so it created like an energy between us that was pretty awesome. And we did that scene a lot. It was a long day, actually. And again, it's like finding that rage, that piece of Waverly. Like, I really appreciate that she has that capacity to go there. And I almost feel like in that moment where she's like, same bitch, and like fucking goes for it, I think it's like she saw red and she almost blacked out. Like, I don't think she actually has clear memory of that at all. I think that when that power comes over her, as we later learn about all of the depths to her, like, I think that it triggered something inside her that was more powerful than her, and therefore the action happened. And then afterwards it makes sense that she was just like, I'm not even really sure what happened. Like, did I kill somebody? Like, the aftermath of that.
That was an interesting moment. I'm glad you had that on your list, because I hadn't actually thought about it, as a moment. But if you think back, I mean, that's a pretty deep moment in Waverly's journey as well, because she comes on the show as this like happy-go-lucky character, and throughout all the seasons and all the stuff they went through, it brings her to this place where she, whether she remembers it or not, or whether she's in the right headspace, she kills Ma'am. It's like, in the beginning, would you have ever thought that Waverly would be someone who kills another character on the show? Like, when you watch the
we all
pilot,
know that Waverly did kill Pikachu. We know that. Like, she did something to that hamster. Probably like Lenny'd it. She loved it too much. She Lenny'd it from of Mice and Men. You know what I'm talking about? Like, totally. So what's something else that you have on your list, Dom?
Okay, I have the Earp sister. I mean, many Earp sister moments, obviously, but one that just kept coming through for me is Waverly knowing that Wynona's pregnant before she even knows herself, and then what comes from that. Which is good that you mentioned it, because it's like the whole Gooverly relation. Like, she finds out after the Gooverly thing. Totally. I thought that was such an interesting way of doing it. Like, Emily, genius, as we know, but like, what a brilliant way of tying it in. And would they have had the conversation had Waverly not been aware? Right. Maybe not, probably not. Wynonna would have found out and just been like, I can't, and maybe deal with it herself. Whereas it forced us into deeper connection because of that experience with Googly and understanding and being like, but then I just like just that little scene on the stairs. I just remember loving playing it. I don't know what it was. It was like a one random outfit. I really like it when you have like an outfit that is seen for one time. Like, can I just say, yes, the boots that you were wearing always stand out for me. I don't know, because they were white or like they were like beige, but like for some reason the way you're sitting on those stairs, those boots just worked really well, didn't it? Like, everything came together. My hair was different. Like, I felt like, we're seeing a little different side of Waverly, which I always really enjoy. And then I just love the dynamic between Wynonna just being like, feeling like she was caught in a secret, and Waverly just being the amazing support that she is, and holding space and offering that to her sister just felt like a really poignant moment. And then, of course, like the behind the door scene is just so beautiful when she finds out. And then even further from that, like, of course, again, this is to do with the pregnancy too, but like, that's the scene that ends with I'm all in, when she's giving the note to Doc. Like, that scene was probably one of the most powerful experiences I've ever had. What did she say? She says it's not going to be easy, but I'm here, or something like that, or something along those lines. Something along those lines, yeah. And I'm not saying it's going to be okay. Yeah. I'm not saying it's going to be okay, but I'm saying I'm here, something like that. Yeah. Yeah, I really love. I mean, the Earp sisters obviously are huge. We could do an entire podcast on just the Earp sisters, which we should do in the future. It's awesome that we talked about Gooverly though, because this relates to it, where she knew this secret, and I always wondered, like, what would Wynonna think? Like, what did she think the secret was? Like, was she hiding another secret that like maybe she thought Waverly knew? And so like when you handed her the bag with the test in it, was she surprised and maybe thought Waverly had a different secret she was, gonna share? I always wondered, like, what is Wynonna hiding? Does she have more? I think the majority of the fandom thinks it was Mama's location. That would make sense. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I would also add that probably Wynonna has a few secrets. Oh yeah. So perhaps she went through a little Rolodex of oh shit, which what is it? What do I have to prep myself for? It's like when you get caught in a lie with your parents when you're younger and you're trying to remember what lies did you tell? Like what is it? What is Which parent is this? What? Yeah, totally.
I love that though. Well, since we talked a little bit about being in like this deep moment, I wondered if this was on your list. It's on my list. It's the Jolene stuff. And you've talked at length about the first time we see Jolene. You've talked at conventions and things, but we haven't really spoken to you since Jolene comes back a second time. And so I'm curious what it was like for you to get to revisit this moment in Waverly's journey, and also getting to revisit with Zoe, getting to play those scenes. But I think it's actually funny because Zoe's hair color changed. And I don't think it was intentional. I think it's just the moment she was available and she was recasted, but it really fit the moment because when we first see Jolene, she's got the dark hair and Waverly's in this really dark place. And then we see Jolene again and Jolene has lighter hair.
Yeah.
And Waverly's in a better place. So it's like, I just loved the difference between that. But I'd love to hear from you. Like, what was it like revisiting that Jolene stuff and being to work with Zoe again?
Great question. And of course, yeah, Jolene was on my list too. How can it not be? I think it's just such an important moment for Waverly, and both equally as important. I'm so glad that we got to revisit the Jolene stuff. It was such a huge moment for me the first time around. I was so nervous about it. I didn't sleep well. That whole episode was just really intense for me, and I was very, very fortunate that things aligned on that day, thank goodness. Because it was such an important scene for so many people. I didn't even realize how important it was going to be in the fandom until afterwards, but I'm so glad that it has been so helpful for so many. Going back the second time and like reading it and being like, oh my God, she's back. I was excited. I was excited because working with Zoe is such a dream. Like she's a really solid actor, you know, and because of our experience the first time, I was like, okay, you know, strap up your, what's the expression? Strap yourself in. I don't know.
Yeah,
buckle up,
Buttercup. There you go. Do it. Yeah. Ride or die, baby. But yeah, like buckle up, you know, and when there's not going to be any messing around, because we mean business, and we understand the depth of these two characters and the importance of it. What I really liked exploring was the fact that I got to, like, I already knew this character, so I felt like Waverly was like, we've been through this before, and you're not getting through to me this time, you know. Whereas before it was like she was so influenced and manipulated and was confused in all the things that she was saying, whereas this time around she was like, I know your tricks. And it's like, I really like the metaphor for like mental health stuff and, you know, anxiety and depression, because I've very much been in that situation still to this day. Like, you know, when you wake up and it's a bad day, sometimes you just like, no, you're not going to get in my head. Like these narratives that we're spinning, like I'm over them. Like I'm done with that. And I felt like that was really what it brought. What the second time round brought was like a resistance to the character, and therefore a different dynamic was created, which I really liked.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it was just amazing to be able to see Waverly in such a different place. And she was able, I mean, the first time you see Jolene, like you mentioned, she was being manipulated. She wasn't able to fight it as much, but then we see her a second time and she's in a much better place. And I think a lot has happened in that season and she was able to sort of fight it off. Even if Jolene, you know, has a few dabs here and there where Waverly's like second guessing herself. I mean, she was able to pretty much hold her own against Jolene. And obviously it is ultimately what turns her into, you know, Angel Waverly or whatever we end up seeing her as. We've been calling her Dark Angel Waverly, but I don't necessarily think she's dark, but that's another conversation. But yeah, but the Jolene stuff, I mean, I just loved it. And, you know, Zoe played so well up against you on screen. It's like those moments in this show, like you mentioned before, you can put anyone on this show together, even for one episode. And it's just perfect. You guys just literally, I mean, it means so much to people. And I go back and watch these scenes, and it's like what it must have been like for you guys to dig that deep and to have to play that. It's just amazing that you played it so well. So thank you for that.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate that. Zoe and I, like, by the end of the day, I mean, that scene was so long, and we shot the whole thing, right? Obviously you had the breaks where you went to the different characters, but we shot the whole thing. So it felt like a play, which is awesome because it means that you can really like get into it in many ways, but it was exhausting. And we had like 2 or 3 days of just, that was it, her and I in this little cabin. And by the end of it, we were like delirious, just kind of like looking at each other like, look at what we did there. Like totally like out of body experience where you go to those depths where you're literally like, full of rage, and then coming out and just being like, okay, it's a very interesting experience, and I've never had it before, and I may never have it again. It was just something that was so unique to those 2 characters.
I think that it was a good way to show people that they can come out on the other side and face their Jolene for whatever reason. And there's a way to overcome that in personally, face your demons in a way. So I really like that. Just a quick aside on this. Are you as annoyed as I was that Waverly didn't get to fly with her wings?
Yeah.
Okay, I mean,
I know, it was actually,
I was like, I'm watching this and I'm like,
walking
she has
around.
wings. Why is she walking everywhere? This makes 0 sense.
Yeah.
Like, I get it. End of the season, no budget, but still.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely agree there. And I also think it's kind of the charm of Waverly Earp, and something that I quite like about the fact that I'm just walking around with these wings on. There's something quite funny about it and sweet,
What can you tell us about that Dark Angel Waverly outfit, though? Because that caused quite a stir in the fandom.
Did it? Interesting.
I don't think anybody liked it.
The whole stir. Yeah, I mean, it was a lot. And I was just curious what you thought about it. Because the outfits, like you mentioned before, they really determine where Waverly's at in her journey. And so when she becomes this Dark Angel Waverly and she's got all this get up, and it's like, was not expecting the hair slicked back. I mean, it was a lot.
Definitely quite the transformation, right?
Yeah.
Like, how can we make like the most extreme shift and change? I thought it was awesome. It was actually a really interesting journey to get to that place with the outfit. Initially, when we started, there wasn't a huge amount of clarity around what Dark Angel Waverly was going to look like. I know Emily had a vision there. We were at one point, there was a like dark black wig that was in the mix, like big curly wig, and I really pushed for the slick back. That was I just think it's
to copy my
be...
style. I get it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, 100%. You're a trendsetter, Laura. But I'm really glad that I sort of like pushed for that, because it is super important to feel badass when you're doing things like that. And the main thing was the shoes. So initially what happened is, at the end of fill in the blank of the episode, but the end of the one where she transforms after being like removed a feather. 10? Yeah.
10, I think, yeah.
Yeah, okay, cool. Just a super quick aside, I'm actually getting a little black feather tattoo on the point where she plucks it out next week to remind me of Waverly and the journey that we went through with that. So super quick aside. But anyway, yes, when she's in the sort of like the grey dress at the end and the wings come out and whatever, that was what she was going to be wearing for the entire time. And I felt like I was in these sort of like ballet pumps, and I just felt like with like strap up kind of all the way up the leg kind of vibe. I just felt so like not in my body and in my power that I was just like, I really feel like the shoes need to be changed. And then there was we had to push the filming like actually 2 or 3 times because nobody could get aligned on what the outfit was and how to make it work so that everybody was happy. So it was actually a really interesting experience to have to stay in integrity of like what feels right on my side, as well as I'm a recovering people pleaser. So that's a tricky thing to kind of say, this is really important to me. Here's why. And but we got there, we got to a place where I think everyone was happy. And if the fandom's happy, that's the main thing. I'm glad that they liked it.
Oh yeah, it was quite a hit. I just loved it. I think if this was your idea, I think it was out of the park, because if you're going to take a character that has been inherently the nicest person in Purgatory and like this happy-go-lucky person for the whole series, and you're going to change them into a dark angel, like that was the complete 180 of what Waverly would have been. So it was literally perfect.
Yeah, you can't kick ass with ballet slippers.
It doesn't quite feel right.
Yeah. And I just love how she walked around with these wings, and like, if I were in the show, I would have backed away, as she walked by, because she just had this energy about her that was like, I just loved it. It was like, also seeing you play that was so fun, because we were so used to seeing you play Waverly as this happy-go-lucky thing. So being able to see such a different demeanor, so I was like, gosh, Dom's just so great. Like, you have every single, aspect of acting. You've done happy, you've done dark, like dark in terms of like mental health. You've done dark in terms of Dark Angel Waverly. It's like, what else could the show have given you?
Seriously, I'm so lucky. When I was thinking back all the moments, like, that time I sang, that was a fun thing on the stage where I was goofily. That outfit was also big highlight. That beautiful dress, I remember just feeling so glamorous, and also when she was singing goofily. But yeah, the layers and as you say, like the roller coaster that she's been on, and the different things that I was able to explore and play with as an actor. Like, I feel like I've done it all. I'm like, okay, I can retire now. Fantastic.
Yeah, Waverly certainly gave you quite a book of, stuff to look back on.
Absolutely.
Is there one more moment on your list you want to share?
I have 2 more on my list, so maybe I can just quickly run through them very quickly. Yes. My first one is the proposal scene. I can't not. I put a big heart around it in my notes because I just can't not. I think like it was just such an important moment for Waverly. I love the fact that everybody was there for it. Just the stars aligned that day, and both Kat and I were in a really great place and feeling really present and just so happy for the characters. Like, oh my gosh, it just was like a relief, a release, a moment of deep connection between Kat and I as well. And awesome that we had everybody there, because it felt like we were sharing. And of course, Winona was going through her process, and there was like, different energy there. But I love the fact that Waverly was the one who was like, no, like, let me do it. Like, that felt really important to me for her. And it was just so beautiful. Like, it was so perfect with the little fire and being at the homestead and everything. The directing of that was really great. I have a question about like technicalities. When you guys are filming stuff that's sort of like in that emotional nugget, like you say, like you were in a good place and you and Kat were feeling the moment. When you're filming, obviously, that like sometimes you have to do multiple takes. Sometimes you have to reset, rearrange. Does it ever kind of take you out of the moment? Do you ever have to like set yourself back and like try to get back to that place for take number 5? Like, what is that like to have to do an emotional moment like that? But you're still filming a show where there could be blips that you need to redo. Absolutely. Yeah, that's it's a struggle for sure. Like, it can be a struggle, I should say. Sometimes you're like, I can do this scene over and over, and it's feeling new every time. But there are certain ones, especially the really important moments, that we put pressure on, that it's like, I have to maintain this. And of course, the minute you like latch on to maintaining it, then it does the reverse effect. But we did that scene a lot, and we managed to stay in that particular one quite consistently, I would say, which is good, because the worst feeling is when you are in a scene and you're feeling really good about the first few takes, and then you're like, oh, they didn't get it on the camera side of things in the first few takes, and you're all out of juice, and then you're like having to go into like the barrel, like somewhere in the depths of your being that you're like, I'm trying to figure this out, but it's not, you know, there can be frustrating moments of that, but it's kind of just like the package of film and TV really. And sometimes you just have to like let it go, that I wasn't able to access that for the whole time. And I hope that in the edit, it will come together. It's just part of the,
well, it came together.
Yes, it did. I mean, I think this proposal in particular, you know, once you took the geese out of the equation, it was a better proposal anyway. So
totally
Yes.
agreed
from the first one.
Yeah.
And what's your second one? And hopefully we can get if we ever get you back on the podcast with Kat to talk all things Way Hot. Hopefully we'll get her take on that as well.
My last one is all of the stuff with Mel on the Halloween episode.
Nice.
Good thing you mentioned that, because that's one of Laura's favorite episodes.
Nice. Me too. It was like I was so craving some Mel time at that point in my journey of Winona Earp. I was like, Earp sister time. I really need that in my life, because it's always such a joy working with Mel, and it brings out so many interesting things for both of the characters and all that. And when I saw that we had to that we lost our memories and that we had to like play high and all this, I was like, yes, like winner, this is going to be the most fun episode ever. And it really was. Like every single scene that we did was so funny, so silly. And what I really liked about it is because we lost our memories, it was like it brought us back to like a season 1 kind of energy of like we didn't have all the history of the things that have happened. We totally forgot about that, and it was just like you could really feel the love between us. And I also really enjoyed wearing the like cop outfit. Like that felt really fun, and I felt really like.
So I actually have a question about that. So we asked Kat this on her on the podcast we did with her, whether or not she knew if that was one of her old outfits or if they tailored something for you. And so you can speak to that. So was it an old outfit of hers? Did they make something special for you? Or
it was one of hers that we had to take in quite considerably, just because of the dimensions of me versus Kat, like, of course. But they did start with her outfit, which I believe, if I remember correctly, she was like, obviously not, whereas it's not true.
When we talked to her, she definitely did not think that it was hers.
Yeah, she was like, it can't be, but it was. So it was, yeah. We took it in a little bit, but the whole idea was, of course, that I think you mentioned it on the other podcast too, like it needed to look a little bit bigger, but obviously it's still sci-fi, so they wanted to take it in so that it looked like half decent.
Yeah, they didn't want to put you in a baggy shirt or anything. They wanted to at least fit a little bit. But I love that. I love that they just took it in, because but
the boots were definitely probably to your size, because there's no way you could have worn. But I think all of those scenes with like authoritative Waverly is probably the gifts for that scene were online almost immediately, where she's like, I'm off duty, bro, and with the cocktail umbrella as like a weapon. It was just it was hilarious. So now a follow-up question to that. I know in that episode Waverly wanted to see Nicole in what is known as the season 1 uniform, with the Stetson and everything and the khakis. We know that that's not a contender in a favorite uniform category.
Agreed.
Which of Nicole's uniforms is your favorite, and also would probably be Waverly's favorite?
Obviously season 2. Like,
right?
I mean, I don't think there is any contender in terms of what Waverly would like.
The zipper, easy access. That's what I'm saying.
Access. And just gorgeous. Let's be honest. It's just absolute fire. But I have to say, I know the conversation about this, and like I think Kat says it very well, that season 3 makes the most sense, and she repeated that.
That's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about.
We're talking about the hot level. The hot level for sure is season 2.
Yeah, the look. We're just talking about the look, not the practicality of everything. We're talking about the look.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Did you guys know? I think there was a Comic-Con like right before season 4 started. Like Emily was just writing it. And I think she teased like way early about a Halloween episode.
It was New York Comic-Con.
It was New York Comic-Con, and it was like way before. So did you guys know there was going to be a Halloween episode? And did you have any input into like the costumes? Because like Winona was Britney Spears and you were this ladybug. Like I wondered if you guys had any input into that or had any conversations about what the characters would be for Halloween.
Yeah. If I remember correctly, Emily typed into our group chat, who wants to be Britney for Halloween? And I was like, me. It didn't go my way. But I don't remember any specific conversations of like, this is what I would like to, apart from me putting my hand up for Britney. I don't think that anybody else had any say necessarily.
Next time you got to reverse psychology, go for the other one, and then you'll get the one that you want.
Right.
That's what you got to do.
It was so perfect that Mel was Britney. She was so awesome. And yeah, it just all worked out really well. And I love the fact that Waverly had like her very sort of like childlike, girly, like interesting sort of like, I made this, kind of outfit, which is just like with the pom-poms. It was really great. And then because there were 2 costume changes that episode, it was like perfect that we then got to wear the Nicole's outfit and then also an angel, which was cool.
Or superhero / she was a superhero, she was an angel.
Totally.
We'll just go into the questions if you want to just go do that. Good. Do you have a scene or an episode that we didn't talk about Waverly?
Well, I mean, of course the Waverly Bobo stuff is huge also, right? There are many moments that we haven't spoken about, 4 seasons of an epic character. There's going to be hours and hours and hours of chat that can be had around all of the epic scenes that I had the honor of playing. But I definitely think with the Bobo stuff, the cabin scene at the end of one, I think, where she's in the ball gown and
the treehouse.
The treehouse, sorry, not cabin, treehouse. That was the last scene I ever filmed on season 1, and I remember thinking that was so epic, and playing with Michael Eklund and just feeling so dizzy, walking around and around and around that little tree house, and just feeling like, wow, what a job that I have doing this with this human right now. And then it being the last scene, and then of course it was like, and we've wrapped, and like tears and all the stuff, because we didn't know we were coming back, so that definitely jumps out.
What is your favorite Waverly line, and why is it the fuck you tirade in the wedding episode where she's like, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you, and not you, sweetie pie?
Even though Nicole's the one really out of all of them that technically has, I remember Varun being like, this is so unfair, like she's the one who's trying to get you. Like, hilarious. How did that land for you? Or the fuck you, fuck you, fuck you? Did you enjoy
it was
that?
Unexpected. I was like, whoa, Waverly is just like, she's really gonna let him have it.
Cursing is always my favorite moment, and coming from like you, Dom, and Waverly is perfect to me.
Yes, so that moment was obviously quite funny. I was just like, oh bloody hell, again, it's like those moments you got to nail this, because it's like if you don't, it would be a bit cringe, wouldn't it? But that was super fun. My favorite Waverly line in the whole 4 seasons, something that's coming through right now, I don't know if it's my favorite Waverly line, but I really like when she's like, the thing that scares me most in the world, the thing that I'm scared of doing most in the world or something is you. Yeah. Like, I just love the phrasing of that. It's just, it's funny and charming and beautiful and true for Waverly, and embarrassing, and also like classic fluster Waverly, like, what did I just say? But also like, that's what I mean, I really like those kind of lines, but it's hard to narrow down, and I definitely didn't think about that before we got them, so that could very well change.
When you were filming season 4, you and Kat had the last scene of the show entirely. And what was it like to be the final scene of the season? And you particularly had the last line where you said home. And so we'll go back and talk about how Waverly entered the season, and you realize, the show is way more about it's about more than just Wynonna Earp. It's about everyone. And I think having Waverly have that last line just proves that it was about the family as a whole. What was it like for you to get to wrap up this season and the show? Like, it was like you got the final say.
I never even really computed that until you said it now. It's really cool, isn't it? I love that scene. I think it's that whole episode was the perfect ending to season 4. Like, just, I wouldn't change a single thing. And I remember how big that moment felt, of course. And just like, it felt like we were both replaying our journeys in that moment together. And especially where we were positioned, looking out on the homestead, just the theme of that scene. Yeah, like you say, it encompasses the journey that everyone's been on. It's not just about Wynonna Earp or the chosen fam that in the show. It's about what came from this beautiful little shit show and the community that it has brought, and how we have all found our home through this show in some ways. And what is home for me, it was also like quite a big moment, because that's an area in which I, as Dom, haven't found yet. Like, I envy that feeling in some ways of really feeling like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, and having that, like, those roots and that grounding, and being in the presence of somebody that like loves you unconditionally. Like, that's what we all kind of aspire for in some ways. And so there was like a complexity to like looking at, like, is this the end? Firstly, the question, like, and deep appreciation for the journey that we've been on to get to that point. And, oh gosh, this is a big moment. Let's not fuck it up, because this is how we're ending the show. And actually, we can't really fuck it up, because we just need to be present with what we're feeling right now, which is so relevant to the characters.
Yeah, it was a perfect way to end. However, nobody wants it to end.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Of course.
So to finish off, I just want to see if you can just finish these sentences.
Oh my goodness.
So, Waverly is
courageous.
Waverly has
beautiful friends.
Waverly will be
a trailblazer always.
Nice. So, I mean, that's all I have on my list. Allison is done with her list. Dom, you had a few good ones on your list. I'm very thankful that you came up with your own. I hope you had a good time talking to us, all things Waverly.
Absolutely. It was like a really lovely exercise for me to like reconnect with the season as well. It's been a minute since it feels like that anyway, especially with what's been going on in the world recently, and to like really think through the journey it's been a really lovely experience. So I thank you for inviting me on, and
of course, thank you for saying yes,
sharing this time to talk about such a huge and important piece of my life and our lives, right? And be able to share that with the community.
Now that we've spoken all about Waverly's journey, Dom, do you want to maybe tell our listeners a little bit about the journey that you've been on personally?
Yeah, I mean, it's so awesome to think about Waverly's journey and the unfolding of that character. And then also there is something so magic about the fact that I was cast in this role and how much it has taught me about myself. But yeah, it's been a really interesting year. COVID brought up a lot of things for a lot of people, and I think it really has been an opportunity for some deepening and further learning about ourselves. Essentially at the beginning of this year, after having had that COVID break and actually having dealt with some of my demons like really head on during that time, and feeling quite overwhelmed by it in some ways. I decided to make this year all about healing. And I was like, when I was doing my sort of New Year's resolution, if you like, or really thinking about what has come up in the year previous and what it is that I want to bring forward, the word that just kept coming to me was like, there's some things that need healing. And so I was calling that in. And what presented itself was the opportunity to go and live with a breathwork facilitator in Vancouver. And I really felt like it was the most bizarrely aligned thing, when I tell you like how it all happened. That's a story for another day, but it was really like the universe saying like, hey, this is where you need to be if you want to really call in healing. And so I went there, I stayed there for 5 months, and I dove deep into the breath, as well as various different plant ceremonies, which was very, very interesting experience. And in one particular ceremony, I called in total self-acceptance and freedom of expression, was what I called in. Little did I know what was going to come next. And then through the breath, I had some pretty deep realizations about the various masks that I had been wearing my whole life, and what would it look like if I really removed those masks that were so scared of fitting in and being accepted by others, and really allowing myself to be seen. What does that actually look like? And what came through was just so crystal clear. And I was actually in ceremony, and somebody, the shaman teacher, we were in circle, and he was like, there's men here, there's women here, and there's 2 spirit people, and just pointed at me. And I had 2 spirit, for those who may not know, is the term used in Indigenous communities for non-binary or genderqueer, or being on the spectrum, the gender spectrum. And I instantly had tears that like came flooding to my eyes, and it was such a visceral moment. And in dissecting that later, it was like the time where I felt most seen in my life. I was really in a place where I was really diving pretty deep, and so I felt like the most myself, and then having that reflected back was just such a powerful moment. And yeah, there has been just this unfolding of me really listening to what's true for me, and finally being honest about that, and shaving my head, and like letting go of everything that no longer feels true for me at this moment. But one thing that I would say is that it feels ever evolving. It's really not a linear journey. Certainly my experience hasn't been linear. It has been winding, and describe it like you kind of do like this, like a spiral, like you've done the loop and you're like, I got it, and then there's like another spiral that uncovers, and another spiral, and I'm still very much on that journey. But I would say that right now what's feeling most authentic is that I'm gender non-conforming. I definitely, like, my truest expression is like, sometimes I really love dressing up like a little teenage boy. And sometimes I love being uber feminine. And sometimes I love like mixing both. And I think like allowing myself to express like that full spectrum is the most freeing and liberating thing that I've ever experienced. And it explains a lot about where my deepest anxieties were actually coming from, because I didn't know who I was supposed to be, and I was just trying, much like Waverly, to be somebody that I thought everybody wanted me to be. And actually, when you let go of that, which is it's a journey, and I haven't mastered it yet, but when you start to let go of that, like what has come through is just maybe not something that like conventionally fits into the norm, but it feels really true for me. And so yeah, my preferred pronouns are they, them. That's feeling really right now, but it's ever evolving, and that may change as life does, right? So I guess I'm open and seeking, and would really appreciate anybody who wants to support that journey to refer to me as they, them. Yeah.
You know, I just want to say personally, coming from me, I'm just super proud of you for taking that step. I mean, I've known you for a couple years. We've worked together with Urbanpalooza. And I mean, honestly, I'm just proud that you felt comfortable doing it. And, you know, like all we ever want in this world is for people to just be themselves and to feel comfortable in that. I'm just so proud that you were able to do that. And I'm here for whatever your journey entails.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
And me, as your best friend and snack dealer at cons, I would like to say, you know, you've really opened my eyes to kind of continue to educate myself on these things. It's really nice to hear from you, and know that your journey is not over. I mean, nobody's journey is over until they're in a grave, I guess, is a good way to say it. So just to know, and even that
then, I'm pretty sure that there's a there's a journey that continues.
Well, yeah, you got to go to Purgatory, and then but I really appreciate you trusting us to speak to us about this, and now the listeners can have gotten a little bit insight directly from you, and can, you know, take that with what they want.
And, you know, this may inspire others. I mean, you're already so inspiring to everybody's journey with Waverly, and, you know, you being comfortable and brave enough to take this journey yourself could help tons of others who are in the same place.
Yeah, absolutely.
And like you said, it's not linear. It's ever changing. It's ever evolving. And that's where it is. On that note, we got a chance to look at Waverly's journey. We got a little bit of insight into your current journey, Dom. We wholeheartedly appreciate you coming on to talk to us. Perhaps you can come on again with Kat and discuss all things Way Hot, with Mel and discuss all things Earp Sisters, and with Tim and discuss all things Way Doc.
Wayla Day is a good one.
Wayla Day, okay. Come with Mikey and discuss all things Waverly and Bobo. You know, we'll just get you on
Waverly.
Well, yeah, Waverly. Sure. We'll just get you on monthly. How about that? Can we have you on monthly?
We'll set up a schedule.
Yeah.
But anyway, so Allison, where can they find us online?
You can find us at Earp Top 5 on Twitter or earptop5.com, and leave us a message wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Yeah, even though you guys probably didn't like this one, but you can follow me at on Twitter at Laura Meet World.
And you can find me at Nona Wayha. And Dom, for those that don't already know, where could they find you at?
So my Instagram is Dominique P_C. And if you're at it, you can follow my nonprofit organization, our nonprofit community, and that is start_the_wave on Instagram. Or you can go to your browser and type in www.startthewave.org.
Wonderful.
Well, thank you again, Dom, and have a wonderul day, everybody. Bye.
Thank you for listening.
Bye.